just wish he knew. I just wish he knew.
Well, alrighty then. We are here. It is time. It's Gulf War time. Shit. Gonna get into a couple of things here. Give me just a second. Fuck? The hell going on here? Weird. I don't know why that one's not pulling up. Oh. Yeah, I don't know. Alright, well, one of them doesn't work, I guess. It is what it is. We do it live, everybody. We do it live. Anyways. Today begins, or marks the beginning of the War Strategies and Battle Tactics series. And we're starting it off with the Gulf War, which started in 1991, ironically, the year that I was born. Alright, well, might as well just jump right into it, eh? The Gulf War was an armed conflict between Iraq and a 42-country coalition led by the United States. Even do this. Here's a map. The coalition's efforts against Iraq were carried out in two key phases. Operation Desert Shield, which marked the military buildup from August 1990 to January 1991, and Operation Desert Storm, which began with the aerial bombing campaign against Iraq on the 17th of January 1991, and came to a close with the American-led liberation of Kuwait on the 28th of February 1991. Crazy. On the 2nd of August, 1990, Iraq, governed by their president, Saddam Hussein, invaded neighboring Kuwait and fully occupied the country within 2 days. The invasion was primarily over disputes regarding Kuwait's alleged slant drilling in Iraq's Rumalia oil field, as well as to cancel Iraq's large debt to Kuwait from the recently ended Iran-Iraq War. After Iraq briefly occupied Kuwait under a rump puppet government known as the Republic of Kuwait, it split Kuwait's sovereign territory into Sadamayat al-Mitla district in the north, which was absorbed into Iraq's existing Basra governorate, and the Kuwait governorate in the south, which became Iraq's 19th governorate. The invasion of Kuwait was immediately met with the international condemnation, including UN Secretary Council Resolution 660, which demanded Iraq's immediate withdrawal from Kuwait and the imposition of comprehensive international sanctions against Iraq with the adoption of UN Security Council Resolution 661. British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and American President George H.W. Bush deployed troops and equipment into Saudi Arabia, and urged other countries to send their own forces. An array of countries joined the American-led coalition, forming the largest military alliance since World War II. The bulk of the coalition's military power was from the United States, with Saudi Arabia, the United Kingdom, and Egypt as the largest lead-up contributors in that order. Additionally, Saudi Arabia and the Kuwaiti government in exile paid out around $32 billion of the U.S. $60 billion cost to mobilize the coalition against Iraq. Damn, that's fucking expensive. Holy shit. Yeah, if you look at the map, the really, really, really light arrows that you can barely see right here are Allied Advance Phase 1. Then these slightly darker arrows are Allied Advance Phase 2. Then the little bit darker arrows are Phase 3 and then Phase 4. Just explaining the map and what all the arrows mean. UN Security Council Resolution 678, adopted on the 29th of November 1990, offered Iraq one final chance until the 15th of January 1991 to implement Resolution 660 and withdraw from Kuwait. It further empowered states after the deadline to use all necessary means to force Iraq out of Kuwait. Initial efforts to dislodge the Iraqis from Kuwait began with aerial and naval bombardment of Iraq on the 17th of January, which continued for 5 weeks. As the Iraqi military struggled against the coalition attacks, Iraq fired missiles at Israel to provoke an Israeli military response, with the expectation that such a response would lead to the withdrawal of several Muslim-majority countries from the coalition. The provocation was unsuccessful. Israel did not retaliate, and Iraq continued to remain at odds with most Muslim-majority countries. Iraqi missile barrages against coalition targets in Saudi Arabia were also largely unsuccessful. And on the 24th of February, 1991, the coalition launched a major ground assault into Iraqi-occupied Kuwait. The offensive was a decisive victory for the coalition, who liberated Kuwait and promptly began to advance past the Iraq-Kuwait border into Iraqi territory. 100 hours after the beginning of the ground campaign, the coalition ceased its advance into Iraq and declared a ceasefire. Aerial and ground combat was confined to Iraq, Kuwait, and areas straddling the Iraq-Saudi Arabia border. The conflict marked the introduction of live news broadcasts from the front lines of battle, principally by the American network CNN. Shit, CNN. It has also earned the nickname Video Game War after the daily broadcast of images from cameras on board American military aircraft during Operation Desert Storm. The Gulf War has also gained fame for some of the largest tank battles in American military history. The Battle of Medina Ridge, the Battle of Norfolk, and the Battle of 73 Easting. The war is also known under other names, such as the Second Gulf War, the Persian Gulf War, Kuwait War, First Iraq War, or the Iraq War. Before the term Iraq War became identified instead with the 2003 Iraq War, also referred to in the United States as Operation Iraqi Freedom, the war was named al-Mariq, mother of all battles by Iraqi officials. After the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, the Gulf War of 1990 and 1991 is oftenly known as the First Iraq War. Throughout the Cold War, Iraq had been an ally of the Soviet Union, and there was a history of friction between Iraq and the United States. The U.S. was concerned with Iraq's position on Israeli-Palestinian politics. The U.S. also disliked Iraqi support for Palestinian militant groups, which led to Iraq's inclusion on the developing U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism in December 1979. Terrorism. George Bush. Shit. Fuck. The U.S. remained officially neutral after Iraq's invasion of Iran in 1980, which became the Iran-Iraq War. Although it provided resources, political support, and some non-military aircraft to Iraq, in March 1982, Iran began a successful counteroffensive. Operation Undeniable Victory. That's actually kind of a badass name, not gonna lie. And the U.S. increased its support for Iraq to prevent Iran from forcing a surrender. In a U.S. bid to open a full diplomatic relations with Iraq, the country was removed from the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism. Ostensibly, this was because of the improvement in the regime's record. Although, former U.S. Assistant Defense Secretary Noel Koch later stated, no one had any doubts about the continued involvement in terrorism. The real reason was to help them succeed in the war against Iran. Alright. With Iraq's newfound successes in the war and Iranian rebuff of a peace offer in July. Damn, I can't read tonight. Arms sales to Iraq reached a record spike in 1982, when Iraqi President Saddam Hussein expelled Abu Nidal to Syria at the U.S.'s request in November 1983. The Reagan administration sent Donald Rumsfeld to meet Saddam as a special envoy and to cultivate ties. By the time the ceasefire with Iran was signed in August 1988, Iraq was heavily debt-ridden and tensions within society were rising. Most of its debt was owed to Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Iraq's debts to Kuwait amounted to $14 billion. Iraq pressured both nations to forgive the debts, but they refused. They're like, nope, pay up, bitch. You owe money. Pay it up now. The Iraqi-Kuwait border dispute involved Iraqi claims to Kuwait territory. Kuwait had been a part of the Ottoman Empire's province of Basra, something that Iraq claimed made Kuwait rightful Iraqi territory. Kuwait's ruling dynasty, the Al-Sabah family, had concluded a protectorate agreement in 1899 that assigned responsibility for Kuwait's foreign affairs to the United Kingdom. Damn it. The UK drew the border between Kuwait and Iraq in 1922, making Iraq almost entirely landlocked. Kuwait rejected Iraqi attempts to secure further provisions in the region. Iraq also accused Kuwait of exceeding its OPEC quotas for oil production. In order for the cartel to maintain its desired price of $18 per barrel, discipline was required. The United Arab Emirates and Kuwait were consistently overproducing, the latter at least in part to repair losses caused by Iranian attacks in the Iran-Iraq War and to pay for the losses of an economic scandal. The result was a slump in the oil price as low as $10 a barrel, with a resulting loss of $7 billion a year to Iraq, equal to the 1989 balance of payments deficit. Damn it. Resulting revenues struggled to support the government's basic costs, let alone repair Iraq's damaged infrastructure. Jordan and Iraq both looked for more discipline, with little success. The Iraqi government described it as a form of economic warfare. I mean, kinda. Which it claimed was aggravated by Kuwait's slant drilling across the border into Iraq's Rumaila oil field. Now wait a second. That's kind of a wild claim. You'd almost have to prove it, and if you did, then an invasion would almost be justified, wouldn't it? According to the oil workers in the area, Iraq's slant drilling claim was fabricated. See? Then it wasn't justified, as oil flows easily from the Rumaila field without any need for these techniques. At the same time, Saddam looked for closer ties with those Arab states that had supported Iraq in the war. This move was supported by the U.S., who believed that Iraqi ties with pro-Western Gulf states would help bring and maintain Iraq inside the U.S. sphere of influence. Dang. So the U.S. just kind of let them do what they were doing. Oh, shit. In 1989, it appeared that Saudi-Iraqi relations, strong during the war, would be maintained. A pact of non-interference and non-aggression was signed between the countries, followed by a Kuwaiti-Iraqi deal for Iraq to supply Kuwait with water for drinking and irrigation, although a request for Kuwait to release Iraq Qasr was rejected. Saudi-backed development projects were hampered by Iraq's large debts. Even with the demobilization of 200,000 soldiers, Iraq also looked to increase arms production so as to become an exporter. Although successes of these projects was also restrained by Iraq's obligations, in Iraq, resentment of OPEC's controls mounted. Yep, people are starting to get pissed. That's how shit goes awry. Iraq's relations with its Arab neighbors, particularly Egypt, were degraded by mounting violence in Iraq against expatriate groups who were well employed during the war, by unemployed Iraqis, among them demobilized soldiers. These events drew little notice outside the Arab world because of fast-moving events directly related to the fall of communism in Eastern Europe. However, the U.S. did begin to condemn Iraq's human rights record, including the well-known use of torture. The UK also condemned the execution of Farzad Bayzoft, a journalist working for the British newspaper The Observer, following Saddam's declaration that binary chemical weapons would be used on Israel if it used military force against Iraq. Washington halted part of its funding. A UN mission to the Israeli-occupied territories, where riots had resulted in Palestinian deaths, was vetoed by the U.S., making Iraq deeply skeptical of its U.S. foreign policy aims in the region. Combined with the reliance of the U.S. on Middle Eastern energy reserves. In early July 1990, Iraq complained about Kuwait's behavior, such as not respecting their quota, and openly threatened to take military action. On the 23rd, the CIA reported that Iraq had moved 30,000 troops to the Iraq-Kuwait border, and the U.S. naval fleet in the Persian Gulf was placed on alert. Saddam believed an anti-Iraq conspiracy was developing. Kuwait had begun talks with Iran, and Iraq's rival Syria had arranged a visit to Egypt. On the 15th of July, 1990, Saddam's government laid out its combined objections to the Arab League, including the policy moves were costing Iraq $1 billion a year. That Kuwait was still using the Rumaila oil field, and that loans made by the UAE and Kuwait could not be considered debts to its Arab brothers. He threatened force against Kuwait and the UAE, saying, "The policies of some Arab rulers are American. They are inspired by America to undermine Arab interests and security." Well, would you look at that? Propaganda. That's where it all begins. The U.S. sent aerial refueling planes and combat ships to the Persian Gulf in response to these threats. Discussions in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, meditated on the Arab League's behalf by Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak were held on the 31st July and led Mubarak to believe that a peaceful course could be established. Well, it was revealed during Saddam Hussein's 2003 and 2004 interrogation following his capture that in addition to economic disputes and insulting exchange between Kuwaiti Emir al-Sabah and the Iraqi foreign minister, during which Saddam claimed that Emir stated his intention to turn every Iraqi woman into a $10 prostitute by bankrupting the country, was a decisive factor in triggering the Iraqi invasion. Dang! Dude, that's kind of a burn, dude. Holy shit. Just straight up. Emir al-Sabah. Dude, that guy's a savage. What the fuck? Damn! Stated his intention to turn every Iraqi woman into a $10 prostitute by bankrupting the country. Holy shit. Yeah, I mean, if I was the leader of a country and you said that about my country's women, I'd probably do the same. I'm not even gonna lie, that's kind of fucked. Holy shit. The amount of disrespect. Ha! Ah, but he still got spanked. Why? Because America. On the 25th, Saddam met with April Gillespie, the U.S. ambassador to Iraq in Baghdad. The Iraqi leader attacked American policy with regards to Kuwait and the UAE. So what can it mean when America says it will now protect its friends? It can only mean prejudice against Iraq. This stance, plus maneuvers and statements which have been made, has encouraged the UAE and Kuwait to disregard Iraqi rights. If you use pressure, we will deploy pressure and force. We know that you can harm us, although we do not threaten you. But we too can harm you. Everyone can cause harm according to their ability and their size. We cannot come all the way to you in the United States, but individual Arabs may reach you. We do not place America among the enemies. We place it where we want our friends to be, and where we try to be friends. But repeated American statements last year made it apparent that America did not regard us as friends. To which Gillespie replied, "I know you need funds. We understand that, and our opinion is that you should have the opportunity to rebuild your country. But we have no opinion on the Arab-Arab conflicts like your border disagreement with Kuwait. Frankly, we can only see that you have deployed massive troops in the south. Normally that would not be of any of our business. But when this happens in the context of what you have said on your National Day, then when we read the details in the two letters of the foreign minister, then when we see the Iraqi point of view, that measures taken by the UAE and Kuwait is in the final analysis paralleled to military aggression against Iraq, then it would be reasonable for me to be concerned. That's what... Damn. I mean... It wasn't a bad rebuttal, but it's a little forgiving, right? I mean, I get it. She was trying to quell intentions, but I think that he knew he didn't want the smoke, and when he decided to go full go, he didn't think the U.S. was going to respond the way that they responded. The result of the Jeddah talks was an Iraqi demand for $10 billion to cover the lost revenues from Rumaila. Kuwait offered $500 million. The Iraqi response was to immediately order an invasion, which started on August 2nd, 1990, with the bombing of Kuwait's capital, Kuwait City. Before the invasion, the Kuwaiti military was believed to have numbered 16,000 men, arranged into 3 armored, 1 mechanized infantry, and 1 understrength artillery brigade. The pre-war strength of the Kuwaiti Air Force was around 2,200 Kuwaiti personnel with 80 fixed-wing aircraft and 40 helicopters. Wow, that's nothing. That's nothing. Holy shit. Iraq was about to go in. Damn. The other map was the one that failed on me was the invasion of Iraq into Kuwait, not the Allied, like the coalition invasion. It was the Iraqi map. But that one, for some reason, like it fucked up. I don't know. It didn't like it. It didn't like it at all. In spite of Iraqi saber rattling, Kuwait did not mobilize its force. The army had been stood down on the 19th of July. During the Iraqi invasion, many Kuwaiti military personnel were on leave. Holy shit. Holy shit. It's like they wanted to give up. God, I mean, they didn't really have a choice. If nobody else did anything, if the U.S. and the coalition forces never did anything, Kuwait would have immediately, like in less than a day, would have been Iraqi territory. Immediately. Nobody did anything. It was just an isolated Iraq and Kuwait problem. Kuwait would have been under Iraq control in under 24 hours. By 1988, at the end of the Iran-Iraq War, the Iraqi army was the world's 4th largest army, consisting of 955,000 standing soldiers and 650,000 paramilitary forces in the popular army. Yeah, that's why I say they would have been taken over immediately. Kuwaiti military, 16,000 men. Iraqi military, 955,000 men. If we didn't intervene, it would have been game over for Kuwait, dude. Game over. Holy shit. According to John Childs and Andre Corvisier, a low estimate shows the Iraqi army capable of fielding 4,500 tanks, 484 combat aircraft, and 232 combat helicopters. According to Michael Knights, a high estimate shows the Iraqi army is capable of fielding 1 million troops and 850,000 reservists, 5,500 tanks, 3,000 artillery pieces, 700 combat aircraft and helicopters, It held 53 divisions, 20 special forces brigades, and several regional militias, and had strong air defense. Well, it was probably somewhere in the middle of that. The low end and the high end. Jeez. Iraqi commandos infiltrated the Kuwaiti border first to prepare for major units, which began the attack at midnight. The Iraqi attack had two prongs, which the primary attack force driving south straight for Kuwait City down the main highway, and a supporting attack force entering Kuwait further west, but then turning and driving east, cutting off Kuwait City from the country's southern half. The commander of Kuwaiti Armored Battalion, 35th Armored Brigade, deployed them against the Iraqi attack and conducted a robust defense at the Battle of the Bridges near Al-Jahara, west of Kuwait City. Kuwaiti aircraft scrambled to meet the invading force, but approximately 20% were lost or captured. A few combat sorties were flown against Iraqi ground forces. Yeah, there's not much you guys are gonna do. I mean, there's really not. The main Iraqi thrust into Kuwait City was conducted by commandos deployed by helicopters and boats to attack the city from the sea, while other divisions were seized the airports and two air bases. The Iraqis attacked the Dasman Palace, the royal residence of Kuwait's Emir, Jabbar al-Ahmad al-Jabbar al-Sabah. Holy shit, the names! Which was defended by the Emiri Guard, supported with M84 tanks in the process. The Iraqis killed Farad al-Ahmed al-Jabbar al-Sabah. Holy fuck. The Emir's youngest brother. Jeez. Their names so long. Within 12 hours, the most resistance had ended within Kuwait, and the royal family had fled, allowing Iraq to control most of Kuwait. Within 12 hours. Game over. After 2 days of intense combat, most of the Kuwaiti military were either overrun by the Iraqi Republican Guard or had escaped to Saudi Arabia. The Emir and key ministers fled south along the highway for refuge in Saudi Arabia. Iraqi ground forces consolidated their control of Kuwait City, then headed south and redeployed along the Saudi border after the decisive Iraqi victory. Saddam initially installed a puppet regime known as the Provisional Government of Free Kuwait, before installing his own cousin, Al-Hassan al-Majid, as Kuwait's governor on the 8th of August. Holy shit. After the invasion, the Iraqi military looted over $1 billion in banknotes from Kuwait's central bank. At the same time, Saddam Hussein made the Kuwaiti dinar equal to the Iraqi dinar, thereby lowering the Kuwaiti currency to 1/12 of its original value. Damn! In response, Sheikh Jabbar al-Ahmad al-Sabah ruled the banknotes as invalid and refused to reimburse stolen notes, which became worthless because of a UN embargo. After the conflict ended, most of the stolen banknotes made their way back into circulation. Today, the stolen banknotes are collectible for numismatists. Hey, check that out. That's crazy. Kuwaiti resistance movement was founded a local armed resistance following the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait. The Kuwaiti resistance's casualty rate far exceeded that of the coalition military forces and Western hostages. The resistance predominantly consisted of ordinary citizens who lacked any form of training and supervision. Damn it. That resistance was shut down rather quickly. Holy shit, we're not even at the start of the fucking US getting into it, and we're already 42 minutes in. A key element of US political, military, and energy economic planning occurred in early 1984. The Iran-Iraq War had been going on for 5 years by that time, and both sides sustained significant casualties, reaching into the hundreds of thousands. Could you imagine? Iraq came out of that war with damn near 1 million soldiers, and they suffered hundreds of thousands of casualties. They would have had over 1 million. Damn. Within President Ronald Reagan's National Security Council, concern was growing that the war could spread beyond the boundaries of the two belligerents. A National Security Planning Group meeting was formed, chaired by then Vice President George H.W. Bush, to review U.S. options. It was determined that the conflict would likely spread into Saudi Arabia and other Persian Gulf states, but that the United States had little capability to defend the region. Furthermore, it was determined that a prolonged war in the region would induce much higher oil prices and threaten the fragile recovery of the world economy, which was just beginning to gain momentum. On the 22nd of May, 1984, President Reagan was briefed on the project conclusions in the Oval Office by William Flynn Martin, who had served as the head of the NSC staff that organized the study. The conclusions were threefold. First, oil stocks needed to be increased among members of the International Energy Agency, and, if necessary, released early if the oil market was disrupted. Second, the United States needed to beef up the security of friendly Arab states in the region. And third, an embargo should be placed on the sales of military equipment to Iran and Iraq. The plan was approved by President Reagan and later affirmed by the G7 leaders headed by the United Kingdom's Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher in the London Summit of 1984. The plan was implemented and became the basis for U.S. preparedness to respond to the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait in 1991. Dang. Within hours of the invasion, Kuwait and U.S. delegations requested a meeting of the UN Security Council, which passed Resolution 660, condemning the invasion and demanding a withdrawal of Iraqi troops. On the 3rd of August 1990, the Arab League passed its own resolution, which called for a solution to the conflict from within the League and warned against outside intervention. Iraq and Libya were the only two Arab League states that opposed the resolution for Iraq to withdraw from Kuwait. The Palestinian Liberation Organization opposed it as well. The Arab states of Yemen and Jordan, a Western ally which bordered Iraq and relied on the country for economic support, opposed military intervention from non-Arab states. Separately, Sudan, also an Arab League member, aligned itself with Saddam. Dang. On the 6th of August, Resolution 661 was placed economic sanctions on Iraq. Resolution 665 followed soon after, which authorized a naval blockade to enforce the sanctions. Yep, can't make sanctions unless you're going to enforce them. Damn it. I mean, at that point, you're basically already at war, right? It said the use of measures commensurate to the specific circumstances as may be necessary. to halt all inward and outward maritime shipping in order to inspect and verify their cargoes and destinations, and to ensure strict implementation of Resolution 661. The United Administration had at first been indecisive, with an undertone of resignation to the invasion and even adaptation to it as fait accompli, until the UK's Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher played a powerful role, reminding the President that appeasement in the 1930s had led to war, that Saddam would have the whole Gulf at his mercy along with 65% of the world's oil supply, and famously urging President Bush not to go wobbly. Fucking Margaret Thatcher. I wonder what some of my UK friends' opinion on Margaret Thatcher is. I'm just curious. I don't know much about that woman, I really don't. But, man, some of the things I've heard about her are actually kind of funny, not gonna lie. Once persuaded, the U.S. officials insisted on a total Iraqi pullout from Kuwait without any linkage to other Middle Eastern problems, accepting the British view that any concessions would strengthen Iraqi influence in the region for years to come. On the 12th of August 1990, Saddam proposed that all cases of occupation and those cases that have been portrayed as occupation in the region be resolved simultaneously. Specifically, he called for Israel to withdraw from occupied territories in Palestine, Syria, and Lebanon, Syria to withdraw from Lebanon, and mutual withdrawals by Iraq and Iran, an arrangement for the situation in Kuwait. He also called for a replacement of U.S. troops that mobilized in Saudi Arabia in response to Kuwait's invasion with an Arab force, as long as that force did not involve Egypt. Additionally, he requested an immediate freeze of all boycott and siege decisions, and a general normalization of relations with Iraq. From the beginning of the crisis, President Bush was strongly opposed to any linkage between Iraq's occupation of Kuwait and the Palestinian issue. Man. On the 23rd of August, Saddam appeared on state television with Western hostages to whom he had refused exit visas. In the video, he asks a young British boy, Stuart Lockwood, whether he is getting his milk, and goes on to say through his interpreter, "We hope your presence as guests here will not be for too long. Your presence here and in other places is meant to prevent the scourge of war." Oops. You done fucked up now, Saddam. Saddam it. You don't take Western hostages. That's the number one way to get the UK and the United States both just immediately into war. It's just like, oh, we're taking some of your people hostage. What? Hell no. Because then you have all of Middle America. It's like, we're going to get our people back. Let's get them. I'm ready. Go sign up for the military with their 5 teeth. Bringing their own guns. Shit. I'm not kidding. That's the easiest way. Saddam made major mistake. War strategy failed. Another Iraqi proposal communicated in August 1990 was delivered to U.S. National Security Advisor Brent Scowcroft. All right, what an interesting name, Brent Scowcroft, by an unidentified Iraqi official. The official communicated to the White House that Iraq would withdraw from Kuwait and allow foreigners to leave, provided that the UN lifted sanctions, allowed guaranteed access to the Persian Gulf through Kuwait Islands, of Bubiyan and Warba, and allowed Iraq to gain full control of the Rumaila oil field that extends slightly into Kuwait territory. The proposal also included offers to negotiate an oil agreement with the United States, satisfactory to both nations' national security interests, develop a joint plan to alleviate Iraq's economical and financial problems, and jointly work on the stability of the Gulf. Well then, on the 29th of November 1990, the Security Council passed Resolution 678, which gave Iraq until 15th of January 1991 to withdraw from Kuwait, and empowered the states to use all necessary means to force Iraq out of Kuwait after the deadline. Yep, basically said, yeah, all those things you said, they're cute on paper, but I don't think you're gonna follow any of it. I really don't. So no. You have until this day. That's your deadline. You don't meet the deadline, you meet the consequences. In December 1990, Iraq made a proposal to withdraw from Kuwait, provided that foreign troops left the region and that an agreement was reached regarding the Palestinian problem and the dismantlement of both Israel's and Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. The White House rejected the proposal. The PLO's Yasser Arafat expressed that neither he nor Saddam insisted that solving the Israel-Palestine issues would be a precondition to solving the issues in Kuwait, though he did acknowledge a strong link between these problems. Interesting. And the plot thickens. Ultimately, the US and the UK stuck to their position that there would be no negotiations until Iraq withdrew from Kuwait, and that they should not grant Iraq's concessions, lest they give the impression that Iraq benefited from its military campaign. Also, when the U.S. Secretary of State James Baker met with Tariq Aziz in Geneva, Switzerland, for the last-minute peace talks in early 1991, Aziz reportedly made no concrete proposals and did not outline any hypothetical Iraqi moves. Well, all right then. On the 14th of January 1991, France proposed that the UN Security Council call for a rapid and massive withdrawal from Kuwait, along with a statement to Iraq that council members would bring their active contribution to a settlement of the region's other problems, in particular of the Arab-Israeli conflict, and in particular to the Palestinian problem by convening at an appropriate moment an international conference to assure the security, stability, and development of this region of the world. The French proposal was supported by Belgium, Germany, Spain, Italy, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and several non-aligned states. The US and the UK and the Soviet Union rejected it. Damn it! US is like, no, we want control. We're still Cold War, Soviet Union, communism. Which unbelievably people still choose to want to fucking... I just don't understand how you can be a communist in 2024, but there are communists in 2024. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Thomas Pickering, stated that the French proposal was unacceptable because it went beyond previous council resolutions on the Iraqi invasion. France dropped this proposal when it found no tangible sign of interest from Baghdad. Well, I mean, it really didn't find any... It didn't find any tangible sign of interest from Russia or the United States either. Or the UK. Shit. One of the main concerns in the Western world was that the significant threat Iraq posed to Saudi Arabia. Following Kuwait's conquest, the Iraqi army was within easy striking distance of Saudi oil fields. Control of these fields, along with Kuwaiti and Iraqi reserves, would have given Saddam control over the majority of the world's oil reserves. Iraq also had a number of grievances with Saudi Arabia. The Saudis had lent Iraq some $26 billion during its war with Iran. The Saudis had backed Iraq in that war, as they feared the influence of Shia, Iran's Islamic revolution, on its own Shia minority. After the war, Saddam felt he should not have to repay the loans due to the help he had given to the Saudis by fighting Iran. I mean, if I'm being honest, it almost feels like Saudi Arabia fought a proxy war with Iran through Iraq. Like, I almost kind of side with the Iraqi ideal on that. Like, dude, you had us fight Iran for you. You gave us money, yeah, but like, bruh, all our people died. Like, isn't that worth something too? Holy shit. Jesus. Soon after his conquest of Kuwait, Saddam began verbally attacking the Saudis. He argued that the U.S.-supported Saudi state was an illegitimate and unworthy guardian of the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. He combined the language of the Islamist groups that had recently fought in Afghanistan with the rhetoric Iran had long used to attack the Saudis. Ah, shit. They fought each other and now he's using their shit. Oh, man. This is probably why fighting proxy wars, like having somebody else deal with your issues, and then charging them for it, like asking, funding that and then asking payback, is a bad idea. Soon after his conquest of Kuwait, Saddam... Oh, wait, I already read that. Yeah. He... acting on the Carter Doctrine policy and out of fear of the Iraqi army could launch an invasion of Saudi Arabia. The U.S. President, George H.W. Bush, quickly announced that the U.S. would launch a wholly defensive mission to prevent Iraq from invading Saudi Arabia, under the codename Operation Desert Shield. The operation began on the 7th of August 1990, when U.S. troops were sent into Saudi Arabia due also to the request of its monarch, King Fahd, who had earlier called for the U.S. military assistance. This wholly defensive doctrine, not holy as in H-O-L-Y, but holy as in W-H-O-L-L-Y. This wholly defensive doctrine was quickly abandoned when, on the 8th of August, Iraq declared Kuwait to be Iraq's 19th province, and Saddam named his cousin Ali Hassan al-Majid as its military governor. Can we agree that this shit is fucking crazy? Fucking crazy? I mean, I can't necessarily knock him for feeling shafted, but I don't think his response I'm talking about Saddam. I don't think Saddam's response to being shafted was the best response. As far as a military leader is concerned, or at least a country leader is concerned, right? Because we're not necessarily looking at, oh, fuck that guy, he's fucking blah, blah, blah. We're going over military strategies here, and that is not a useful strategy to have. It just isn't. Like, holy shit, it is not. It's probably the worst idea you could possibly have. Like, holy fuck. Suck it up. Refuse to pay, to be honest with you. I would have just refused to pay as long as I could. Been like, look, dude, what are you going to do about it? You going to send an army up here or what? I fought your war for you. I'm not going to fucking pay you back. And these assholes need to stay off my lawn. Basically, there was no need for him to go all the way into Kuwait. Yeah, I mean, the territory is fucking, could be argued as beneficial because you could have a port, blah, blah, blah. You're not totally, completely landlocked, yada, yada. Right? But knowing Kuwait's allied situation, it wouldn't behoove you to invade Kuwait like that. It just really wouldn't. Like, any logical human being would know this. I really don't see how one could not. It's fucking crazy to me. I don't know. But what I do know is the U.S. Navy dispatched 2 naval battle groups built around the aircraft carriers USS Dwight D. Eisenhower and USS Independence to the Persian Gulf, where they were ready by August 8th. The U.S. also sent battleships USS Missouri and USS Wisconsin to the region, a total of 48 U.S. Air Force F-15s, and 1st Fighter Wing at Langley Air Force Base. Virginia landed in, from the 1st Fighter Wing at Langley Air Force Base, Virginia landed in Saudi Arabia and immediately commenced round-the-clock air patrols of Saudi Kuwait-Iraqi border to discourage further Iraqi military advances. Yes, they used a lot of good shit. They used the fucking F-117 Nighthawk, F-15s. They used F-14s, A-10s, Apache helicopters, fucking all kinds of shit. F-4 Phantoms. You name it. Shit was crazy. Actually, that being said, all right. They were joined by by 36 F-15ADs from the 36th Tactical Fighter Wing at Bitburg, Germany. The Bitburg contingent was based at Al-Karj Air Base, approximately an hour southeast of the Riyadh. The 36th TFW Tactical Fighter Wing would be responsible for 11 confirmed Iraqi Air Force aircraft shot down during the war. 2 National Guard units were stationed at Al-Karj Air Base. The South Carolina Air National Guard's 169th Fighter Wing flew bombing missions with 24 F-16s flying 2,000 combat missions and dropping 4 million pounds of munitions. And the New York Air National Guard's 174th Fighter Wing from Syracuse flew 24 F-16s on bombing missions. Military buildup continued from there, eventually reaching 543,000 troops, twice the number used in the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Much of the material was airlifted or carried to the staging areas via fast sea lift ships, allowing a quick buildup. As part of the buildup, amphibious exercises were carried out in the Gulf, including Operation Imminent Thunder, which involved the USS Midway and 15 other ships, 1,100 aircraft, and 1,000 Marines. In a press conference, General Schwarzkopf stated that these exercises were intended to deceive the Iraqi forces, forcing them to continue their defense of Kuwaiti coastline. Damn. Yup. Some of the footage of some of the stuff they used. Man. I'd love to fucking fly a damn A-10. So bad. I'm telling you. If the United States initiates a draft, even though I wouldn't necessarily have to get drafted because I'm fucking old. I'm like fucking old, right? But if they did initiate the draft, I feel like I'd go sign up in the Air Force just to get fast-tracked to be an A-10 pilot. I have the last name for it, I'm just saying. I do. A series of UN Security Council resolutions and Arab League resolutions were passed regarding Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. Resolution 678, passed on the 29th of November 1990, gave Iraq a withdrawal deadline until the 15th January 1991, and authorized all necessary means to uphold and implement Resolution 660, and a diplomatic formulation authorizing the use of force if Iraq failed to comply. To ensure the U.S. received economic backing, James Baker went on the 11th day, journeyed to 9 countries in September 1990, which the press dubbed the Tin Cup Trip. The first stop was Saudi Arabia, which a month before he had already granted permission to the United States to use its facilities. However, Baker believed that Saudi Arabia should assume some of the coast off the military efforts to defend it. When Baker asked King Fahd for $15 billion, the king readily agreed, with the promise that Baker asked Kuwait for the same amount. Holy shit! That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. It was just like 15 billion. Fuck it. We got that. We can do 15 bill. The next day, 7th of September, he did just that. And the Emir of Kuwait, displaced in a Sheraton hotel outside his invaded country, easily agreed. Baker then moved to enter talks with Egypt, whose leadership he considered the moderate voice of the Middle East. President Mubarak of Egypt was furious with Saddam for his invasion of Kuwait, and for the fact that Saddam had assured Mubarak that an invasion was not his intention. Egypt received approximately $7 billion in debt forgiveness for its providing of support and troops for the U.S.-led intervention. $7 billion in debt forgiveness. That's crazy. After stops in Helsinki and Moscow to smooth out Iraqi demands for a Middle Eastern peace conference with the Soviet Union, Baker traveled to Syria to discuss his role in the crisis with its president Hafez Assad. Assad had a deep personal enmity towards Saddam, which was defined by the fact that Saddam had been trying to kill him for years. Come on now. Harboring this animosity and impressed with Baker's diplomatic initiative to visit Damascus, Assad agreed to pledge up to 100,000 Syrian troops to the coalition effort. This was a vital step in ensuring Arab states were represented in the coalition. In exchange, Washington gave al-Assad the green light to wipe out forces opposing Syria's rule in Lebanon and arranged for weapons valued at $1 billion to be provided to Syria, mostly through the Gulf states. Holy shit. In exchange for Iran's support for the U.S.-led intervention, the U.S. government promised the Iranian government to end U.S. opposition to World Bank loans to Iran. On the day before the ground invasion began, the World Bank gave Iran the first loan of $250 million, which in comparison to all the money that was being thrown around at the time is basically nothing. Holy shit. Here's $7 billion in debt forgiveness. Here's $15 billion from each of the Arab states that are, assisting with the freaking invasion. Like, that's just crazy. 250 mil from the World Bank, and Iran's like, yeah, we're cool. You can do it. Baker flew to Rome for a brief visit with the Italians, in which he was promised the use of some military equipment before journeying to Germany to meet with American ally Chancellor Kohl. Although Germany's constitution prohibited military involvement outside Germany's borders, Kohl committed a $2 billion contribution to the coalition's war effort, as well as further economic and military support of the coalition allied Turkey, and the transportation of Egyptian soldiers and ships to the Persian Gulf. Damn! There's another $2 billion. Just, here you go. A coalition of forces opposing Iraq's aggression was formed, consisting of forces from 42 countries: Argentina, Australia, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Belgium, Canada, Czechoslovakia, Denmark, Egypt, France, Germany, Greece, Honduras, Hungary, Italy, Japan, Kuwait, Luxembourg, Morocco, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Niger, Norway, Oman, Pakistan, the Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Qatar, Romania, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Singapore, South Korea, Spain, Sweden, Syria, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, and the United States. It was the largest coalition since World War II. A group of Afghan Mujahideen soldiers also reportedly joined towards the end of the war. All right, look at that. U.S. Army General Norman Schwarzkopf Jr. was designated to be the commander of the coalition forces in the Persian Gulf area. Yes. Warts face, cough. Cough, cough. Pause. Schwartz McCofferson. That guy. Holy shit, Schwarzkopf. And by that guy, I mean this guy right here, Schwarzkopf. U.S. Army General Norman Schwarzkopf Jr. was designated to be the commander of the coalition forces in the Persian Gulf area. The Soviet Union condemned Baghdad's aggression against Kuwait, but did not support the United States and Allied intervention in Iraq, and tried to avert it. Of course, the Soviet Union tried to avert it. They're against everything the United States does. They're like, oh, the United States is trying to do this? Sweet, we're against it. We directly oppose that. We don't care what it is. We just oppose it. The United States could be picking apples, and they're like, no, fuck that. Fuck apples. Jeez. Although they did not contribute any forces, Japan and Germany made financial contributions totaling $10 billion and $6.6 billion respectively. Luxembourg also provided financial support to the coalition. U.S. troops represented 73% of the coalition's 956,600 troops in Iraq. Damn! they were ready for the whole ass war. Many of the coalition countries were reluctant to commit military forces. Some felt that the war was an internal Arab affair, or did not want to increase U.S. influence in the Middle East. In the end, however, many governments were persuaded by Iraq's belligerence towards other Arab states. Offers of economic aid or debt forgiveness and threats to withhold aid. A whole bunch of coercion going on. Yep, went over that in the introduction episode if you need definitions for these terms. That's literally a shit ton of coercion right there. Holy shit. Just get coerced. Here's some aid. Or we'll just refuse your ability to get aid from anybody else. It's cool, whatever. You can make your choice, but I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, you're digging your own hole. Man. Was it wrong for the U.S. to get involved? I mean, in reality, that's the question. How destabilized would the world have become if we had just let Saddam do his bullshit? I mean, honestly. How destabilized do you think the United States would be? Or not the United States, but the world in general, as far as oil prices go. Now, I know the United States has a lot of oil. I'm not discounting that. But there are a lot of other countries that are not the United States that also depend on the Middle East for oil. It wasn't just the United States that would be destabilized. That's one of the things you have to think about as a military strategist. You have to it's not just your country that you have to worry about. Now, do I think that our country should be protecting a certain little country in the Middle East? I don't know. I don't necessarily see how it's beneficial. I really don't. I don't see how it serves us any purpose, any benefit whatsoever. In fact, it's more of a drain than anything. It's like a cancerous growth. No reciprocation. And if we refuse to help, then we're condemned. Ridiculous. Ridiculous victim mentality. That's how a lot of people in the United States live nowadays. It's pretty sad. The U.S. and the UN gave several public justifications for involvement in the conflict, the most prominent being the Iraqi violation of Kuwaiti territory integrity. Yeah, right. Come on. You didn't want them to have control of all the oil, dude. Like, resources. The number one reason people go to war, resources or territory. And I'll guarantee you, territory, the only reason you're going to war for that specific territory is because of the resources located within that territory. Man. There are other reasons people go to war, but the main reason is resources. In addition, the United States moved to support its ally Saudi Arabia, whose importance in the region and as a key supplier of oil made it considerable geopolitical importance. Exactly. Shortly after the Iraqi invasions, the U.S. Defense Secretary Dick Cheney. That fucking guy. Oh my goodness. Holy shit, Dick Cheney. Made the first of several visits to Saudi Arabia where King Fahd requested U.S. military assistance during a speech in the special joint session of the U.S. Congress given on the 11th of September 1990. Bush summed up the reasons with the following remarks. Within 3 days, 120,000 Iraqi troops with 850 tanks had poured into Kuwait and moved south to threaten Saudi Arabia. It was then that I decided to act to check that aggression. Sure you did. The Pentagon stated that satellite photos showing a buildup of Iraqi forces along the border were the source of this information, but this was later alleged to be false. A reporter for the St. Petersburg Times acquired 2 commercial Soviet satellite images made at the time which showed nothing but empty desert. Shit. Photoshop in the 90s. Hey, if you gotta start a false flag. Hilarious. Other justifications for foreign involvement included Iraq's history of human rights abuses under Saddam. Iraq was also known to possess biological weapons and chemical weapons, which Saddam had used against Iranian troops during the Iran-Iraq War and against his own country's Kurdish population in the Al-Anfal campaign. Iraq was also known to have a nuclear weapons program, but the report about it from January 1991 was partially declassified by CIA on May 26th of May 2001. Although the Iraqi military committed human rights abuses during the invasion, the alleged incidents that received the most publicity in the U.S. were fabrications of the public relations firm hired by the government of Kuwait to persuade Americans to support military intervention. Propaganda. Propaganda. Gotta love it. Shortly after Iraq's invasion of Kuwait, the organization Citizens for a Free Kuwait was formed in the U.S. It hired the public relations firm Hill and Knowlton for about $11 million paid by Kuwait's government. Damn. Shit. Kuwait paying for propaganda in the U.S., among many other means of influencing U.S. opinion, such as disturbing books on Iraqi atrocities to U.S. soldiers deployed in the region, free Kuwait t-shirts, and speakers to college campuses. Every time. It's always free this, free that, I promise. Every fucking time. If it's free this, free that, it's fucking propaganda. Jesus. Fuck. Holy shit. Dozens of video news releases to the television stations. The firm arranged for an appearance before a group of members of the U.S. Congress in which a young woman identifying herself as a nurse working in the Kuwait City Hospital described Iraqi soldiers pulling babies out of incubators and letting them die on the floor. Holy shit! The level of propaganda that they will go to is unbelievable. There's no confirmation that that actually happened. What the fuck? But, of course, they'll come in to, say that shit in front of Congress. Like, hey, this is what's happening over there. My ass. The story helped tip both the public and Congress towards a war with Iraq. Of course it did. 6 congressmen said the testimony was enough for them to support military action against Iraq, and 7 senators referenced the testimony in debate. The Senate supported the military actions in a 52-47 vote. However, a year after the war, this allegation was revealed to be a fabrication. The young woman who had testified was found to be a member of Kuwait's royal family and the daughter of Kuwait's ambassador to the U.S. She hadn't lived in Kuwait during the Iraqi invasion. Damn! Damn! Under false pretenses. That's got to be some kind of war crime. Shit. Propaganda. The details of the Hill and Knowlton public relations campaign, including the incubator testimony, were published in John R. MacArthur's Second Front, Censorship and Propaganda in the Gulf War, and came to it wide public attention when an op-ed by MacArthur was published in the New York Times. This prompted a re-examination by Amnesty International, which had originally prompted an account alleging even greater numbers of babies torn from incubators than the original fake testimony. After finding no evidence to support it, the organization issued a retraction. President Bush then repeated the incubator allegations on television. Damn it. Of course he did. He wanted to go into war. That gotta gain the support from the people somehow. Appealing to emotion is the easiest way to do it. Holy shit. Emotional people don't make rational decisions. Fuck. They don't ask rational questions. They just, yeah, let's do it. Fuck it. Save the babies. Well, in reality, the Iraqi army did commit various well-documented crimes during its occupation of Kuwait, such as the summary execution without trial of 3 brothers, after which their bodies were stacked and left to decay in a public street. Iraqi troops also ransacked and looted private Kuwaiti homes. One resident was repeatedly defecated on. A resident later commented, the whole thing was violence for the sake of violence, destruction for the sake of destruction. Imagine a surrealistic painting of Salvador Dali. Or by Salvador Dali. U.S. President Bush repeatedly compared Saddam Hussein to, of course, you guessed it. You guessed it. It's always that fucking guy, man. Holy shit. God damn. You know, they call Trump him too. So now Trump's the equivalent of Saddam Hussein? Like, come on. Why is it always that guy? When you want to appeal to some kind of fucked up emotions in people, you just always like, this guy is fucking Hitler. Like, what the fuck? Why is it always him that people reference? It's fucking asinine. Considering Stalin was... Holy shit. You want to talk about a... Like, dude. Stalin was worse. God damn. Some of the people that get overlooked in history because they want to refer to one specific person. Like, how much are you going to milk that before it's like, okay, seriously, put it away. You're overusing it now. Everybody can't just be like this one guy. And if they are, well, fuck. God damn it. Then I guess that guy was thinking some popular shit, wasn't he? Just gonna throw that out there. If you're gonna call everybody or refer to everybody as a certain figure, you might want to rethink that. Because then that means it's popular thought. Groupthink. Fucking crazy. Why don't you just call them who they are? Sick bastards. Fuck. I mean, in all reality, just sick bastards based on a moral standard. Because if you have no morals, then were they really sick bastards? Nope. So for those of you that don't have morals, those were just people. The Gulf War began with an extensive aerial bombing campaign on the 16th of January, 1991. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. The aerial bombing campaign. We love the aerial bombing campaign. We do. It's fantastic. Ah, shit. For 42 consecutive days and nights, the coalition forces subjected Iraq to one of the most intensive air bombardments in military history. The coalition flew over 100,000 sorties, dropping 88,500 tons of bombs, which widely destroyed military and civilian infrastructure. Welcome to war. Iraqi anti-aircraft defenses, including manned portable air defense systems, were surprisingly ineffective against enemy aircraft, and the coalition suffered only 75 aircraft losses and over 100,000 sorties, 44 due to Iraqi action. 2 of these losses were the result of aircraft colliding with the ground while evading Iraqi ground-fired weapons. One of these losses is a confirmed air-to-air victory. Iraq's government made no secret that it would attack Israel if invaded. Prior to the war's start and in the aftermath of the failed U.S.-Iraq peace talks in Geneva, Switzerland, a reporter asked Iraq's English-speaking foreign minister and deputy prime minister Tariq Aziz, "Mr. Foreign Minister, if war starts, will you attack Israel?" His response was, "Yes, absolutely, yes, we will. Yes, Habibi. Yes, Habibi, we will. We will attack them." 5 hours after the first attacks, Iraq's state radio broadcast declared that the dawn of victory nears as this great showdown begins. Iraq fired 8 missiles the next day. These missile attacks were continued throughout the war. Iraq fired 88 Scud missiles during the war's 7 weeks. Iraq hoped to provoke a military response from Israel. The Iraqi government hoped that many Arab states would withdraw from the coalition as they would be reluctant to fight alongside Israel. Following the first attacks, Israeli Air Force jets were deployed to patrol the northern airspace with Iraq. Israel prepared to militarily retaliate, as its policy for the previous 40 years had always been retaliation. However, President Bush assured Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir not to retaliate and to withdraw Israeli jets, fearing that if Israel attacked Iraq, the other Arab states would either desert the coalition or join Iraq. Which is not wrong. He's probably accurate. That was probably a really good call. It was also feared that if Israel used Syrian or Jordanian airspace to attack Iraq, they would intervene in the war on Iraq's side or attack Israel. The coalition promised to deploy Patriot missiles to defend Israel if it refrained from responding to the Scud attacks. Which they did, and that's a Scud missile, and that's a Patriot missile. Let's go! The Scud missiles targeting Israel were relatively ineffective, as firing at extreme range resulted in a dramatic reduction in accuracy and payload. 2 Israeli civilians died as a direct result of the missile attacks. Between 11 and 74 were killed from incorrect use of gas masks, heart attacks, and incorrect use of anti-chemical weapons drug atropine. Approximately 230 Israelis were injured. Extensive property damage was also caused, and according to the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, damage to general property consisted of 1,302 houses, 6,142 apartments, 23 public buildings, 200 shops, and 50 cars. Damn, how do you destroy all those buildings and apartments with only taking out 50 cars? What the fuck? It was feared that Iraq would fire missiles filled with nerve agents such as sarin gas. As a result, Israel's government issued gas masks to its citizens. When the first Iraqi missiles hit Israel, some people injected themselves with an antidote for nerve gas. It has been suggested that the study The sturdy construction techniques used in Israeli cities, coupled with the fact that Scuds were only launched at night, played an important role in limiting the number of casualties from Scud attacks. In response to the threat of the Scuds on Israel, the U.S. repeatedly sent Patriot missile air defense artillery battalion to Israel along with 2 batteries of MIM-104 Patriot missiles for the protection of civilians. The Royal Netherlands Air Force also deployed a Patriot missile squadron to Israel and Turkey. The Dutch Defense Ministry later stated that the military use of the Patriot missile system was largely ineffective, but its psychological value for the affected populations was high. I mean, anything to feel protected, right? Coalition air forces were also extensively exercised in Scud hunts in the Iraqi desert, trying to locate the camouflage trucks before they fired their missiles at Israeli or Saudi Arabia. On the ground, Special Operations Forces also infiltrated Iraq, tasked with locating and destroying Scuds, including the ill-fated Bravo 20 patrol of the SAS. When Special Operations were combined with air patrols, the number of attacks fell sharply, then increased slightly as Iraqi forces adjusted to coalition tactics. As Scud attacks continued, Israelis grew increasingly impatient and considered taking unilateral military action against Iraq. On the 22nd of January 1991, a Scud missile hit the Israeli city of Ramat Gan after 2 coalition patriots failed to intercept it. 3 elderly people suffered fatal heart attacks. Another 96 people were injured and 20 apartment buildings were damaged. After this attack, the Israelis warned that if the U.S. failed to stop the attacks, they would. They would fail to stop the attacks too? Ah, shit. I think he meant to say they wouldn't. Ah, shit. Oh. At one point, Israeli commandos boarded helicopters, prepared to fly into Iraq, but the mission was called off after a phone call from U.S. Defense Secretary Dick Cheney, reporting on the extent of coalition efforts to destroy Scuds and emphasizing that Israeli intervention could endanger U.S. forces. In addition to attacks on Israel, 47 Scud missiles were fired into Saudi Arabia, and one missile was fired at Bahrain and another at Qatar. The missiles were fired at both military and civilian targets. 1 Saudi civilian was killed and 78 others were injured. No casualties were reported in Bahrain or Qatar. The Saudi government issued all its citizens and expatriates with gas masks in the event of Iraq using missiles with warheads containing chemical weapons. The government broadcast alerts and all-clear messages over television to warn citizens during Scud attacks. On the 25th of February, 1991, a Scud missile hit a U.S. Army barracks of the 14th Quartermaster Detachment out of Greensburg, Pennsylvania, stationed in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, killing 28 soldiers and injuring over 100. Oh, we're pissed now. A subsequent invasion found that the assigned Patriot missile battery had failed to engage due to the loss of significance effect in the onboard computer's floating point calculations, compounding over 100 hours of consecutive use, shifting the range gate position far enough to lose contact with the Scud during tracking action. Damn it. That's what happens. On the 29th of January, Iraqi forces attacked and occupied lightly defended Saudi city of Khafji with tanks and infantry. The Battle of Khafji ended 2 days later when the Iraqis were driven back by the Saudi Arabian National Guard. Supported by the Qatari forces and U.S. Marines, the Allied forces used extensive artillery fire. Both sides suffered casualties, although Iraqi forces sustained substantially more dead and captured than the Allied forces. 11 Americans were killed in 2 separate friendly fire incidents, and an additional 14 U.S. airmen were killed when their AC-130 gunship was shot down by an Iraqi surface-to-air missile, and 2 U.S. soldiers were captured during the battle. Saudi and Qatari forces had a total of 18 dead. Iraqi forces in Khafji had 60 to 300 dead and 400 captured. Damn. The Battle of Khafji was an example of how air power could single-handedly hinder the advance of enemy ground forces. Upon learning of Iraqi troop movements, 140 coalition aircraft were diverted to attack an advancing column consisting of 2 armored divisions and battalion-seized units. Precision standoff attacks were conducted during the night and through the next day. Iraqi vehicle losses included 357 tanks, 147 armored personnel carriers, and 89 mobile artillery pieces. Some crews simply abandoned their vehicles upon realizing that they could be destroyed by guided bombs, stopping the divisions from massing or for an organized attack on the town. One Iraqi soldier who had fought in the Iran-Iraq War remarked that his brigade had sustained more punishment from Allied air power in 30 minutes at Khafji than in 8 years of fighting against Iran. That is hilarious. Holy shit. More punishment from Allied air power in 30 minutes than in 8 years of fighting in Iran. Oh my god. Just goes to show just how gnarly United States Air Force is. Jesus fucking Christ. Holy shit. Yep. Damn. That's crazy. Man. Task Force 141 Infantry was a U.S. Army Heavy Battalion task force from the 2nd Armored Division. It was the spearhead of 7 Corps, consisting primarily of the 1st Battalion, 41st Infantry Regiment, 3rd Battalion, 66th Armor Regiment, and the 4th Battalion, 3rd Field Artillery Regiment. Task Force 141 was the first coalition force to breach the Saudi Arabian border on the 15th of February 1991 and to conduct ground combat operations in Iraq, engaging in direct and indirect firefights on the enemy with the enemy on the 17th of February 1991. That's when we brought out the fucking Abrams. We started going ham. Started going ham on the ground. We were like, oh, hell no. Yup, we went in, buddy. Dude, Abrams tanks are crazy. You could take out a tank from like 3 miles away. And, a fatal blow is like 1.9 to 2 miles or some shit like that. But you can disable a tank from 3 miles. That's fucking nuts. It's fucking nuts to think about. You're sitting in a fucking armored vehicle that could take something else out of the equivalent, strength or defense, I guess, and fucking you're 3 miles away. That's fucking crazy to me. Shit is crazy to me. Like, goddamn. Shortly after the arrival in theater, Task Force 141 Infantry received a counter-reconnaissance mission. 141 Infantry was assisted by the 1st Squadron, 4th Armored Cavalry Regiment. This joint effort would become known as Task Force Iron. Counter-reconnaissance generally includes destroying or repelling the enemy's reconnaissance elements and denying their commander any observation of friendly forces. On the 15th of February 1991, 4th Battalion of the 3rd Field Artillery Regiment fired on a trailer and a few trucks in the Iraqi sector, observing American forces, forcing them into the fog of war. Let's go, buddy. On the 16th of February 1991, several groups of Iraqi vehicles appeared to be performing reconnaissance on task force and were driven away by fire from 4-3 FA. Another enemy platoon, including 6 vehicles, was reported as being to the northeast of the task force. They were engaged with artillery fire from 4-3 FA. Later that evening, another group of Iraqi vehicles was spotted moving towards the center of the task force. They appeared to be Iraqi Soviet-made BTRs and tanks. For the next hour, the task force fought several small battles with Iraqi reconnaissance units. TF-141IN fired tow missiles at the Iraqi formation, destroying 1 tank. The rest of the formation was destroyed or driven away by artillery fire. On the 17th of February, 1991, the task force took enemy mortar fire, but the enemy forces managed to escape. Later that evening, the task force received enemy artillery fire but suffered no casualties. That same evening, the task force identified an Iraqi mortar position and engaged it with both direct and indirect fires. The Iraqis continued probing operations against the task force for approximately 2 hours. For the next 2 days, the task force observed Iraqi wheeled vehicles and small units moved in front of them. Several times, Iraqi mortars fired on Task Force 141 infantry positions. On the 18th of February, Iraqi mortar positions continued to conduct fire missions against the task force. The task force returned fire on the Iraqi positions with artillery fire from 4-3 FA and 1st Infantry Division Artillery. During the Iraqi mortar attacks, 2 American soldiers were wounded. Iraqi reconnaissance elements continued to patrol the area between Task Force and the 1st Cavalry Division. 7 Corps air units and artillery conducted combat operations against Iraqi defensive positions. Holy shit. Yeah. God damn. I think that's good enough for part 1, right? Part 2, we'll get into the breach, the ground campaign, the end of the active hostilities, and then we'll get into some of the, like the cost, the aftermath, the casualties, like that kind of stuff. We'll get into some of the meaty statistics, the meaty stats. Then we'll go over some of the technology that was used. And we'll talk about what gave the coalition such a major advantage other than 42 countries versus 1. Holy shit. Other than it being a massive coalition versus 1 country, we'll take a look at what tactically gave them the advantage. Aside from the obvious, which mainly comes down to technology. That's ultimately what it comes down to. Just comes down to the technology. Yeah. So, that's the first part of the war. The air campaign and the beginning of the ground stuff. We learned today how Kuwait basically got rammed up the butthole by Saddam. And it was in basically everybody's best interest to not let him continue to go. Especially Saudi Arabia and Israel. Honestly, I think they could have handled themselves, considering that the rest of the Arab world was kind of already pissed at Saddam. I really don't think the US or the UK had to get involved. I think if they started firing missiles into Saudi Arabia, then it would have become a strictly Arab conflict. Might have made the price of oil suck for a minute. There might have been a little bit of destabilization, but I don't know if we necessarily had to go in the way we went in. I think it was just to assert dominance and kind of make a statement. Like, look, y'all thought all we had was nuclear weapons to assert our dominance. Well, guess what? That's not all we got. We got the Abrams, we got the F-14, we got the F-15, we got the F-16, we got the Apache, we got the A-10. What you want? The F-4 Phantom, we can give you whatever you want. Shit. But yeah, next time, the ground campaign and the conclusion to the Gulf War. The analysis. All the good stuff. I mean, we got into some of the good stuff. My favorite stuff is the aerial stuff. The planes. I love me some planes, especially the A-10. Holy shit. Holy shit. I love me some airplanes. Oh, anyways. I'm going to go ahead and call it on this episode. But I'll leave you guys with an outro. That is also the intro. But it will also be the outro. Shit. If I can figure out my I'm like brain dead today. Fuck. I can't do anything. Jesus. Where is it? Yep, we do this shit live, people. We do it live. Man. Well, that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful morning, afternoon, night, evening, midnight, midday, just before midday, just after midday, slightly afternoon, dusk, dawn. Doesn't matter where you're at in the world. Enjoy your time. It could be limited. Maybe not. Maybe so. You never know. So, you might as well enjoy the time that you have. The moment that you're currently existing in. I mean, there is a theory, ultimately, that of quantum immortality. If you haven't heard of that, look it up. It's kind of interesting. I'm not saying that, that hypothesis or that theory has any substantial weight to it, but it's still an interesting read nonetheless. The basic premise behind it is every time that you would have died, your consciousness transfers to another possible universe where you didn't die and carried on and will continue to carry on forever because your consciousness is immortal while your physical being maybe not. It's a weird concept. Probably a terrible description for what it is. But it changes nothing. Changes nothing. I still want you to have a wonderful time. I, on the other hand, am gonna go catch some fucking Z's. Either that or I'll fucking hop on Speakeasy's chat if he's still, or panel if he's still alive, and agree with him the whole time about the fact that abortion should be abolished. It just should. Why would we directly stop the propagation of our own species? Like, that has to be one of the dumbest fucking things I've ever seen human beings come up with. Man, like, seriously. We kill each other enough with war as it is. Why do people have such a fascination with, like, limiting our fucking progress? Holy shit. Because they're all R-slurred. God. Well, I aim to fix that. That's part of the reason I do this education-style format. Is so that, in hopes, some people gain at least a little bit of knowledge. I know that I'll gain a little bit of knowledge along the way. It's not like I know everything about all these topics I read about, but reading is a good thing to do, and I think more people should do it often. I know I'm terrible at it, but I'll get better. I'll get better. Stay tuned. You'll see. Oh. Anyways, that's it for me, y'all. I will see you tomorrow. Right? Wait, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, technically tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. Right? Yes. Holy shit, this is confusing me. Jesus. Because Verbal Combat is on Fridays. Over on Speakeasy's channel. And so I don't usually stream on Fridays unless I get eliminated. But that's not a possibility anymore. So I probably won't get eliminated. So I'll probably be on there until like 3 in the fucking morning my time. Which means that there won't be a stream Friday night into Saturday morning. Right? But in exactly 24 hours from now will be Thursday night into Friday morning. So that's where I got confused. Issue solved on stream. Look at that. Yeah, let's go. I'm just kidding. I'm not fucking stupid. Sometimes I can be, especially when I haven't had any fucking sleep. Shit. All right. Have a good night, everybody. I'll catch you next time.
I just wish he knew. I just wish he knew.